My name is Kevin Lamp, and I played baseball in Los Alamitos. And my brother Dennis Lamp made it to the big leagues. Also, Greg Harris played in the same little league, and as lo and behold, Greg and myself, and played many years up through high school and college. And
Harris, I'm the pitcher that came out of Los Alamitos High School in 1974. Went to Long Beach City College for 2 years, signed in 1977. And again, I was growing up in Los Alamitos, but my dad was actually a coach at Millikan High School in Long Beach. So therefore, that's my Long Beach tie, and that's how I was able to go to Long Beach City and be part of the Long Beach, baseball alumni clan that came out of there many, many years ago.
So you guys have known each other a very long time, I'm assuming.
Since we're 10.
Since the kids, yep, little guys.
Okay, and obviously you played with Dennis with the Red Sox. I was actually talking to my buddy Bernie here today, who I do my podcast with, and he's a big Boston fan. He talks like and he said, I go, I'm talking to Greg Harris tonight. Sure, I remember him. He was very excited, and Dennis too, because he's a longtime Red Sox season ticket holder. I guess my question to you is, how cool was it to play with Dennis while you were, in Boston? I mean, I got to imagine that was like.
Well, like I say, it's like playing with one of your hometown buddies, and we finally came around. He started before I did. He was a couple of years ahead of me. And then when I came over to Boston in 1989, and then Dennis came over from from the Toronto Blue Jays, and we hooked up, and we were both relief buddies, and it was just both middle relief or wherever they needed, and it's a neat thing to be able to play with somebody from your hometown.
So this is for you, Kevin. What makes Long Beach special? As I was saying, I noticed a great deal of pride and community there, which I haven't seen. I see it in LA, but I haven't seen it it kind of has this strong roots there. Like, people are proud to be from there. What do you think that's about?
Well, I think part of the reason is when I was a kid growing up, as was Greg, the Los Alamitos Navy base, which is still there, and the fields are still there. We got to watch guys like Jeff Burrows, who became the #1 bonus baby. I remember watching him as a 13-year-old and 14-year-old with Craig Swan. And Long Beach was, wow, these guys are going to be major leaguers one day, which they became. They won the World Series in 1965. And as it turned out, Craig Swan, who pitched for the Mets, ended up throwing out the first pitch in Game 3 in Los Angeles. And I think just the town, Los Alamitos is, just outside there. But there was just a great connection with all the scouts and stuff like that. And Greg, I remember Buck Arnold and Bob Harrison as, they were scouts, and we were all, wow, these guys are scouts. And they I know they scouted you, and Harry Minor.
I would say Harry Minor and his son. And, a good story is Craig Swan played at Millikan High School, and Bob Myers was the coach at the time, ended up being a Hall of Fame coach in Long Beach. Plus, he coached me at Long Beach City College when we won the state championship in '76. Well, I was the bat boy those days in Millikan because my dad was the coach of football and basketball. And when I first signed and made it to the big leagues in '81, Craig Swan was one of the pitchers on that staff, along with Tom Seaver and Pat Zachary. So again, that was our first encounter playing with somebody that I was a bat boy for back when they were in high school. And so it's R.J. Harrison was another one. He was the catcher who eventually became a catcher for the Cardinals, and then eventually was the head scout for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays when I was there coaching after my playing days.
So, okay, so this is, one of the things that when I talk to people here about Boston, LA being the greatest sports town in the country, a lot of Boston people it really gets their ire up. And you played in Boston, and which you can actually speak to that um, as well, or you could, about what's the difference between Boston and Los Angeles as a sports town, having been in both areas.
Well, like I say, I think it's really two different animals, because you figure, when you're in the West Coast, you got more diversity, with the Padres and the Angels and the Dodgers and the Giants. And then when you're in Boston, it's the Red Sox. It's just the Red Sox. It's just the Boston Bruins. It's the Patriots. You see what I'm saying? So it's a single, basically one thing that they come and see. And one thing about the Boston fans is if you're wearing a Red Sox uniform, it don't matter who's in it. It's just they come out and want to watch a Red Sox game. And, my first encounter was '89 when we came out and played the Angels. There was more Red Sox fans when I grew up here in Anaheim in Orange County at the game than there were Angel fans. So, you can tell that the following is really huge no matter where they go.
Um, that's great. But and now, as far as, and I'll throw this out to both of you, why do you think more major leaguers come out of like Long Beach and California? Because you sent me the list, and it's got to be because people will say, "Oh, it's the weather." Naturally, it's the weather. Is there more to it than the weather?
The water. It's the weather has a lot to do with it, but you got to remember in California, you can play all year round. That's one thing that is huge when it comes to playing sports. You can play all year round outside. When you're back east, when it's wintertime, it's time to go indoors and play the indoor sports. We still have that here, but we can also still, play baseball and play basketball and soccer and all that outdoors. So what that creates is more of an overall rounded athlete, not just a one particular, just baseball only. Because, basically when I was coming through, the best athletes weren't necessarily a baseball player. It was somebody that can, play in all the sports. They're just good athletes that can play the game. And then eventually they get to a certain point where they're going to have to choose one or the other, between football, basketball, baseball. I mean, there's so much to choose from when it comes to, picking a professional sport. So I think that has a lot to do with, the versatility of being able to play more sports and see what you're really good at. And it seems like baseball was the most popular.
What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I think that's part of the reason. I mean, when we played in college, I played at Long Beach State. We played 35 games before the season started because we had winter ball and we were playing all these junior colleges and we were going up against 4-year schools. So, we kind of we had spring training, and like the Arizona League, you could go to Long Beach and do it. And but I think when you were mentioning about what's the difference between the Boston fans and the Dodger fans, and we were big Dodger fans. Dennis was warming up in the bullpen one time, and one of the guys yelled, "Hey, Lamp, you got a brother?" And he goes, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Because I'm getting tired of booing your ass." So he got a kick out of it because he'd always start talking to the fans and stuff, and but anyways, I just thought of that.
So, you mentioned Long Beach State, and Kevin, this is for you. You mentioned Long Beach State. Did you have, and did you also have other people that you might, other schools that you were looking at as well? Both of you
I
guys?
was a walk-on at Long Beach State, so I didn't have, I had no options.
Okay.
And what I thought was great was John Gonzalez, who just passed away. I said to him, I'd played 2 years at Cypress College, and Cypress College, which is nearby, they've had a great history of players. And what's interesting, 3 years prior to me going to Cypress, Brian Downing was on the team, and he told me he only batted 3 times the whole year, but he had a neighbor that was a scout with the White Sox, and he signed him as a catcher. And then, the rest is history. He made it to the big leagues. And then Trevor Hoffman was actually a shortstop at Cypress. And then he was a shortstop in Arizona. And then somebody converted him into a pitcher. So, there was a lot of other athletes that, you thought were going to be good shortstops or good, and then they converted to something. So that was another thing that's amazing, because there's so many different teams you can play on. I mean, they had Connie Mack League, they had the American Legion team, they had all these different leagues for all these kids. And my dad was a coach for Los Alamitos American Legion team. And after Greg and I left, he says, I'm having trouble finding kids because they don't want to make a commitment to one team. They want to make a commitment. Well, I'm going to play for this team or that team. And my dad eventually just said, hey, look, I'm not going to do this. And the 4 best players from the Los Alamitos High School says, I'm not going to play for you because Connie Mack's got a better team. And my dad says, I'm going to start an expansion team, which he did. And he started 15 and 16-year-olds and said, hey, we're going to get our brains beat out, but we're going to. He had 2 kids that eventually played pro ball, Brian Duquette and Mitch Olson. And, they learned a lot. And I think that was one of the things he was able to develop players.
And then, Greg, you went to Long Beach
City.
Okay.
Long Beach City, yep.
And then you got drafted by the Mets.
I got drafted by the Mets. First I was there in '75 for the legendary Joe Hicks. And Joe Hicks, like I say, when it comes to Long Beach, the coaching in Long Beach at all levels were just, something that we were all fortunate to learn how to play the game the right way, and sportsmanship and team unity, and just going out and giving it your best. And then it was Bob Myers when Joe retired, and then that's when we won the state in '76, and then went on to play in Alaska in Fairbanks in '76, and ended up winning the whole thing there, and then came back. And it actually, coincidentally, I had 2 offers from the Mets, and one was for the Red Sox. And so if you go to 1976, okay, and you're trying to weigh, which is doing, because Harry Minor was the head scout for the Mets, and that was a good friend of the families, and it was a good rapport after all these years. But the idea is, okay, the Mets last place, not doing very well. They probably need pitching. Boston's in first place. They're pitching very well. They're playing well. So decided to take the Mets. And in my second year, we played one of the Boston Red Sox minor leagues team when I was in the Carolina League. Come to find out, they don't have pitching. They're all about hitting and defense and no pitching. And then when I signed with the Mets, all they got is flamethrowers and hard throwing pitchers, but as it turned out, back when I first signed, it's you get outs. It didn't matter how hard you threw. If you got outs, you moved up. And so coincidentally, that's how that all came about.
Craig Swan was also, if I remember correctly, Craig Swan played for the Mets too.
That is correct. Yep.
See, I know.
Yes, you did.
Well, what you have to remember, he keeps mentioning Bob Minor. Bob Minor was a scout that actually is in the New York Mets Hall of Fame, and he, set his roots in Boston, and he actually rented out a home to Larry Sherry, who was the 1959 World Series guy, and actually Greg has a connection with.
Yeah, that was my pitching coach with the Padres in '84.
Wasn't there a Norm Sherry too?
There's a Norm Sherry too.
Okay.
It was Norm with, not Larry. It was Norm. Norm's brother.
Okay.
And Norm was the one. They were brothers, but Norm is the one that fixed Koufax. He couldn't throw strikes, and I guess he slowed him down and helped him with that. But what I was going to say about Harry, he scouted, and like I said, he's in the Hall of Fame. And when they won in '86, was it Cashin was the owner or whatever? He said, I want to thank Harry Minor for putting this team together, because locally he got Dykster, Darryl Strawberry, and during the draft, they wanted to draft somebody else. And he says, we need to draft this kid, Dwight Gooden. And he said, well, he's only 17. He says, yeah, but he can pitch in a World Series for us by the time he's 20. And as it turned out, that's what happened. So he was just a tremendous guy. And I used to love to when he was there, he would come and watch Dennis pitch and watch me pitch. And he was a little more impressed with Dennis. But also, my high school coach, I went to St. John Bosco, which is a school of a lot of former players and or big leaguers. My brother was the first one to make it to the majors, St. John Bosco in Bellflower, and they're the #1 football team now of all the high schools. And when he went there, also Nomar Garcia Parra made it to the bigs. Evan Longoria made it to the bigs. Bud Smith, who threw a no-hitter with St. Louis. So there was a lot. And when I was at Bosco, we had the best coach. We had Tom Gamboa, who ended up becoming the third base coach for the Cubs and the first base coach for Kansas City. Actually, he's the one where the fans jump over the father and son team jumped over the fence. So, and Tony Muser was another one who, was from Long Beach, became a manager and played with Baltimore. And so there was just, it was just amazing.
Remember, you got Bobby Grich came out of Wilson.
Yeah.
And, like I say, even at La Salle, we had, Robbie Nen came out of there. Craig Chamberlain was probably the first one from La Salle. Then I followed him. And then Rod Perkle was with the Seattle Mariners. And then what's the other one, Kevin, from the outfielder?
Mike Kelly?
Mike Kelly. Mike Kelly was a power hitting outfielder with the Braves. And so, there was just, those schools just had really good coaching, good talent. And, I think Kevin hit it really good that we had a lot of opportunity to play a lot of games against a lot of good players consistently each year. And, even in other sports, we play with the same people in basketball. We might play the same people in football. But the idea is you're playing so many games before your season starts that, you're able to really, hone your skills. And, like I say, I was, a pretty good pitcher in high school, but it wasn't until I got to Long Beach City working with Joe Hicks that I was actually taught how to pitch, how to location, how to change speeds, hit the inside corner, how to, just throw more strikes, get ground balls and just learn how to set up your pitches instead of just going out there and being a thrower. And I think you find a lot of that in Long Beach is old school, that they just teach you to, throw strikes, change speeds, and, let your infielders do their work.
There's a grit there, right? I mean, would you say in Long Beach it's kind of a, being on the East Coast, we hear Long Beach, right? We hear, but but a lot of us don't know anything about it, right? So is Long Beach a type of, you mentioned the ports. Is there like a toughness in Long Beach, kind of a, grinded out type of, like a workman-like approach?
Well, very, very much so. At all levels there. You got the high schools, the powerhouse of poly high schools, that just, had great athletes that just were just animals, and then even when we're youth, it was just work hard, just, have a bad day, turn around, go back the next day, just, grit and bear it and just do the best you can each day and, learn from whatever your mistakes are and whatever they teach you. And you just learn to apply it. And, mostly it's fundamentals. It's just catching the ball right, being able to throw it to the right base, know where to throw it, just learning how to play the game correctly. And same thing with pitching. You can't pitch behind an account. You've got to learn to throw and pitch ahead of the count. So, you have to be really aggressive. And we were taught to pitch inside. That was our biggest thing growing up is, really getting them off the plate and pitching hard in and soft away.
That's amazing. Dennis or Gavin.
Oh,
sorry.
What I was going to say, the amazing story about Greg, him and I were the two best pitchers in the league when we were 12. And we were a little smaller with, the draw of players. So Los Alamitos was like the little sister of Long Beach. And I pitched the first game and beat Bellflower 1-0. He pitched the second game and he beat Long Beach 2-0. So there's that, competitiveness. Hey, we got to beat Long Beach. They're winning it all. And we got to continue to do that. And then the other thing I was going to mention was Greg was amazing because he didn't start on the varsity till his senior year. They had two guys, Gary Williams and Mike King, that were just phenomenal. And he finally got it. He threw 8 shutouts in a row. And I said to Greg, I says, hey, did you throw another shutout? And he goes, yeah. And he says, I beat St. Anna Valley. He said, Gary Templeton got 3 hits off me. Which was the first first switch hitter to get 100 hits from both sides of the plate.
Which is, yeah, and he was a great player. I guess he was traded for Ozzie Smith, if I...
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And I played against Ozzie Smith in college. He went to San Luis Obispo, and that was the only scholarship he got. And I remember when he was a junior, he got drafted by, I think, the Pirates. He didn't sign, and he played his senior year. And I said, I don't know if this guy's going to make it. He can't hit, And lo and behold, the following year, he was playing shortstop for the Padres. And from what I understand, I think he had like a size. He went to Lock High, and I think that's where Eddie Murray came out of, and Ellis Valentine. And he had a size 24 waist out of high school, from what I understand.
Wow.
And
you
so
can flip mine in the other way.
Oh, mine too.
Like just go whoop.
So
the invert. Who would you say? And I want to get to talking about your ambidextrous book and some of the things that you're doing. But who would you say, not to put you on the spot, who's the best player to come out of Long Beach?
Well, like I say, you have Bob Lemon coming out,
300
way
wins.
back in the day, and Tony Gwynn. People don't forget about Tony Gwynn was actually a great basketball player at Pauley High School, and then he ended up playing baseball. And, you got so many good ones, but, I think Bob Lemon, in my case, just because of, what he accomplished as a pitcher.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He won 300 games. And the other player that, Pasadena is not too far from Long Beach, but Jackie Robinson came out of Pasadena.
That guy.
And then you had Ted Williams in San Diego. And as I mentioned to you, I had and Greg was there. I had that dinner at Phil Trainey's with the oldest living player at the time, Chuck Stevens, who played for the St. Louis Browns. And what was amazing was when they interviewed him, he says, yeah, there was 3 players. There was me in Long Beach Poly, and there was some kid named Jackie Robinson and a kid from Ted Williams were like the big names. And 2, those guys, what's his name? Chuck Stevens, he played in the minors for the Hollywood Stars. They played at a field in Wrigley Field, and my brothers used to love it. I wasn't born yet. They used to go there. And if you can believe it, Chuck Stevens played in a 182 game schedule.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable how those guys, and then here he became, and he's a Long Beach guy. He got the first hit ever off Satchel Paige when he made it to the big leagues at age 42.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah, it's just some unbelievable. And I think I told you when my Dennis was playing in American Legion ball, so I said that kid from Fullerton is only 15 years old. And did you see the home run he hit at the Navy base? And somebody said, oh yeah, but who did he hit it off? And then the next game they played Los Alamitos, and he hit 2 home runs, and it was Gary Carter. He was only 15.
And Fullerton, and amazing. So he's up there too. I mean,
yeah,
he's not a Long Beach guy, but in Southern California, I mean, it's unbelievable. You go through the list of names. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm sitting there like, I'm thinking about my baseball cards as a kid, and I'm thinking Los Angeles, Darryl Thomas, Los Angeles. It just went on and on and on. So,
well, the other thing that you got to remember too is that don't forget the DiMaggio brothers.
Oh yeah, right from
they're all from East Bay, and then you had the Boones, all the way from Ray, Pat, all the sons, played there in Orange County, and then so it's just they're just everywhere, and I got to play against most of those guys, except for the DiMaggios. So, the Boones I got to play against, and so it's just you just run into them everywhere you play because there's so many.
And the lineage, I mean, it sounds like, Dennis, your dad was Dennis, I'm sorry.
Well, I
Kevin,
get it all the time.
I know, but I know it, right? But
Yeah,
Kevin,
yeah.
Kevin, why is I mean, your dad was a coach.
He was a coach, but what was amazing was most of these guys, my dad went to Boys High in Brooklyn, Bay Ridge area. And Al Campanis, who was the Dodgers GM, he was from Brooklyn. He came out in '58 with the Dodgers, Al Campanis, and stayed here. And then my dad came out in '46, and then he said the Dodgers follow him out here. But my dad used to go to Wrigley, I mean, not Wrigley, he used to go to Ebbets Field, and he would come back with stories. We'd listen. Vin Scully was another one that had so much. I mean, everybody had a transistor radio at the Dodger game, and my dad's friend from work goes, these Dodger fans are crazy. They're in the can there, listening to it on a transistor radio, and they would just really. My dad would come up. You talk about players. Bartolo Colon, and he said, I looked the guy up. I couldn't believe it. He said, he was telling Tommy Lasorda at dinner. He said, do you remember Fat Freddie Fitzsimmons from the Dodgers? And he said, oh yeah. And I didn't realize this, but this guy played, I think back in the 30s or 40s. He won 217 major league games. And my dad said that he threw a no-hitter, and he didn't have enough money to buy a car. So they would walk to he'd walk to Ebbets Field, and he said he remembers they had those little chicken wire baskets, and they put money, quarters and dimes and whatever, to help buy him a car. And he ended up getting like, I think $1,200, and then they bought him a brand new car. And they were just, just so many people. And then Norm Larker was another one. He played in the '59 World Series, and I played with his sons. And he taught hitting, and it just, baseball was just. And the other thing, when you talk about baseball, you talk about competitiveness. I mean, you're out there playing, and they'll call you every name in the book while you're out there, the opposing team. We played Legion ball, and somebody start warming up and say, "Hey, is that your is that your head or your throat? Cough that up while you're warming up," and
There's a lot of ragging going on. They were trying to get into your head early.
Yeah, and then they would say, they brought you in to put out the fire, and you brought a blowtorch, and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, another thing that, besides, Kevin's dad, who was, just your normal dad that just loved the game. In Los Alamitos, the majority of the coaches coming through when we were little were just dads that knew the game. There wasn't anything, that they did professionally. And, there's a gentleman I think that Kevin knows is Jordan Ehrenkrantz, who had coached us when we were 9 years old. Just a dad that, the sons went to school together and came up and used to go watch the games when we were in high school with my dad and mom. And, he's just now passed away here a ways back, but they were just dads that just loved to work with kids and see if we can make them better. But I think that's part of where the coaching started, is at an early age for us.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention, when he was talking about that with my dad, I thought of a game. We played at Glover Stadium, which was in Anaheim near Angel Stadium, and we had a playoff game. And Greg in the first inning gave up 4 runs, and I was warming up, and my dad looked down at the bullpen and he says, I think we have a better option with keeping Greg in the game, So the parents were saying, take Greg out, put somebody else in. Well, he gave up 4 runs in the first, shut him out the last 8 innings, and we won 20-4, and Greg hit a grand slam and a 3-run homer in the game.
Wow.
And my dad tried to and Greg didn't listen to my dad, because he threw right, but he batted left. And he says, Greg, I want you to bat just straight right-handed, because, you're going to expose that arm. And he had explained to him that Sandy Koufax quit switch hitting because they didn't want him to get hit in that front arm, in the left arm. But you ended up getting 2 hits in your first game. Was it left or right-handed, or?
There's one from each side.
Wow.
My debut in San Francisco.
So let's talk about that because one of the things that when Kevin told me that he's like, oh yeah, well, Greg Harrison. I'm like, as soon as he mentioned, I'm like, I remembered that you were the ambidextrous pitcher, and I am an ambidextrous person myself, and I do things with both hands. Like I'm very versed in. And so my question to you is, how did that start? I mean, how did you, when did you learn how to pitch from both sides?
It just happened, through the years. It's just I had the ability to be able to use both hands. When you're little league and in elementary school, you're able to play kickball and you're able to, at that age throw with any arm. And I didn't discover it till later anyway. It's just something that came about as the years went on, and it just eventually turned into the big deal.
So I was thinking about this. Okay, so they would say, oh, he's a quirky left-hander or an oddball left-hander, right? Or they would a left-hander that's eccentric, right? You would hear these comments, right? So when you came into a game, if you were pitching left-handed, did you have a different mindset as a right-hander?
Nope, same mindset.
Okay.
I would come in, my hat would always be straight, so you never know which side I was coming from. That's one thing that
oh, that's cool.
was deceiving in that regard. Time the dogs. So especially in Texas, I used to go in the door, and then the equipment manager would be sitting there and said, okay, well, which hat you wearing today? And he's it's always straight. So I never wore crooked. I wasn't quirky. It was just straight right-hander. They can throw from both sides.
Okay, because I'm thinking about it. It's like, coming in, you're being, if you're relieving and you're a lefty, it's like, there's already a mindset. I'm assuming, being a reliever, you have that's interesting because I was thinking, like, does he come in with another approach? So, then my other question is, you never had an arm injury throughout your major league career. In your book, you talk about that. Can you speak to that?
What's that now?
How come you've never? Why do you think you never had an arm injury?
Oh, because I was 6'1", 150. I was built like a twig, and I was real wiry. That's one thing I was blessed with, was the ability to just be loose, and I wasn't a real big thick guy. I didn't really bulk up or do that. We still did our normal weights and strong legs, but no, I was just blessed, like I say, being really flexible, and I was able to throw a lot without any problems because I had a pretty good mechanics.
And Tom House was a big.
Tommy House was the pitching coach there in Texas, yeah.
Because he was the guy, didn't he? Was talking about throwing it like a football, or he would be on the field throwing a football.
Yeah, we threw the football. When I was with the Padres, we used to do that. We used to goof around with throwing the football around, and you didn't realize, that throwing a football really helps you as a pitcher, because I was a quarterback and, all the time, growing up in the street and, in junior high and, throwing the football, but realized that really helps you as a quarterback. So we were using that as a, like a conditioning to throw before you picked up a baseball.
Gotcha. And then as far as why do you think more pitchers don't pitch from both sides?
It's just something that was never really thought of, back then. It's probably more so now, that it's, there's more people out there that can do it. But back in the day, it just wasn't something that, it was thought of. I mean, switch hitting was a big deal, but switch pitching just was not a thought.
And tell us quickly about your book.
Well, like I say, the book is going to be about, that day that I threw left-handed, and eventually how it maybe all came about, and just how, the waiting for opportunities to do that, and it'll explain probably some of the programs I went through to prepare for, that one moment. So it's just going to be a combination of a lot of that.
In life, being, I'm a left brain and right brain person. I mean, it's kind of that pitching from both sides, being the switch pitcher. It's kind of like it's kind of a metaphor in a lot of ways to be able to tackle life in a lot of ways. Like different situations call for different, you know, uh, sides. Would you agree? I mean, do you see the kind of the
I think
connection
in
there?
my situation, it was always dead center.
Okay.
It's not been able to talk with anybody else. I don't know what their thinking was. But I just know mine. It just felt natural from both sides, so there really wasn't too much thought process. It's just you know pick it up, go right, pick it up, go left, and just do what you normally do from both sides. So it's just like a habit, repeating the same thing over and over.
You,
When is the book? Oh, sorry. Sorry to
no,
cut
go,
off.
I was sorry to interrupt, but I was going to tell you that when Greg played for San Diego, he had that six-finger glove. That was the new glove. And Andy Van Slyke was on third base, and Randy Reddy was standing next to him, the third baseman. And he said, "Hey, what's with that glove?" And he goes, "He's amphibious." And, and he goes, "Amphibious? What does that mean? He can pitch underwater?" But go ahead and tell him when your book's going to come out. I know you're still
Yeah.
working on it.
No, I don't. I have no idea. This is totally new to me, so we're just kind of, you know, putting things together as I want to explain it. So it's, just that's all I can say right now. It's just, going to be a big story.
In the work. Okay, so this is my question for both of you, and I appreciate you guys talking. This is great because you guys know baseball in Southern California, obviously. So, what do you think? And we did a I did a we did a special with Mike Port and Norm Charlton and one of the writers from the Boston paper, Steve Buckley. I don't know if you remember.
Remember
Okay,
Buckley?
yeah, good guy. And we did it. We did a document. We did a show called The Old Ball Game. And Mike had um, recently. We were going to do another one. Mike recently had some a health issue. He had like a mild heart attack, and he basically was telling my buddy Bernie, I had a mild heart attack. So he's okay, but he had to put it on hold. But the thing that we talked about during the show is kind of what's what's going on in the game of baseball today, and we wanted to get Norm was very irreverent. He doesn't pull any punches with what he says. But my question to you guys, both of you, is what do you like about today's game, and what do you think should change?
Well, it's interesting to see how the change showed up. I think I saw it coming when I was coaching in the minor leagues when we had to do everything by computer, and instead of just writing it down and talking about it. So now the computers come into, and then all of a sudden the percentages started showing up. And, it's the same talent, but the way the game's being played is what's changed. And now they're looking for outside help, which, I'm not too keen on, questioning calls, and then all of a sudden you got to call timeout and go see if that call was made right. I mean, the umpires are, human, and that's something that they've had in the game for 100 years. It's just part of the game. If they make a bad call, they make a bad call. Same thing with pitch call. There was a change in pitch locations when the umpires decided to go from on top of the catcher like they did with the big balloon. They stayed over the catchers.
Mm-hmm.
So you were able to get both sides of the plate. And we didn't really care about up and down, but we wanted to be able to have command of both sides. Now, when they went down in behind the catcher on the inside, now the inside corner disappeared, but the outside corner got farther away. So, I think it's today's zone is really tough for these pitchers to pitch, except for the veterans. But I know the youngsters coming through, it's a challenge for them, to be able to make that adjustment, and where the strike zone has changed. And plus, it's all about how hard you can throw for an inning. And they're now throwing waist high to see if they can, throw it by you. And the hitters are changing their swing to more uppercut to be able to hit that. And so it's happening both ways, but you're seeing more the home runs because, they're elevating the ball and the hitters are catching up to it. And when you're throwing 99 miles an hour, you don't have to put too much of the wood on it. You let the pitcher do all the work. And then, again, there's no base stealing. There's not much bunting or hitting around like in the old school. So it's more base to base.
Interesting you said that. Tommy Davis, who won the batting title for the Dodgers in '62, beat Clemente in '63. He beat out Frank Robinson. And he said, yeah, baseball, he says, when we played, we had Maury Wills on first base and Jim Gilliam was the second hitter. He would go all the way to the back of the batter's box because he wanted to give Maury Wills enough time to steal a base. And he said if he thought he was going to get caught, he would just try to flick it away. So there's no more moving the runner around or squeezing or, it just seems that, when do you see first and second, bunt them to second and third? It's just a lost art. And I think too that, Greg pitched, he could start, pitch in the middle and close. And same thing with my brother, Dennis. And when he pitched in high school, they pitched him 7 innings on Tuesday and then 2 days rest, 7 innings on Friday. So he would, and I think they don't throw as much. And I think that's why there's a lot of injuries that I can still remember. Al Campanis and Buzzy Bavasi. My dad had asked, what about, it's kind of changed now, but what about pitchers lifting weights, back then? And he said, well, when Sandy Koufax starts lifting weights, we'll all lift weights because, he just had a natural arm. He didn't have to lift weights.
That's interesting because, Arrieta, he was he's a big weightlifter. And it seems like, it kind of after those 2 seasons where he had this unbelievable run, it kind of like started to crap out a little bit. And I'm wondering if that, maybe weightlifting maybe had something to do with it. Could be.
Yeah.
So those are my questions. And then what do you think about the runner on second in the extra innings? I think that's a horrible.
I don't like it because, when someone loses a save, usually you'd have somebody come in and, get the last 3 outs. So there's nobody on base. And now all of a sudden there's a guy at second base. So I think it's going to mess with, I don't think we'll ever see with that is, you're going to see saves kind of dwindle because they're going to say, hey, there's a runner on second and you didn't get out of the inning and somebody got a hit, so you lost a save, so they'll say, how did they get the runner in scoring position? Well, they put him out at second base.
So is there anything, are there some good changes? And I'll, want to be mindful of your time, but is there any good changes that you like right now?
How about you, Greg?
I think the good changes is they're getting a lot more opportunity for the kids to come in and play. You're seeing a lot of rookies come in and start. The opportunities are there because of the, way that they've changed now the pitching where they can't, pull them out one for every batter. So now they're able to keep more bench players and have more opportunities. And, again, it's like, when the Tampa Bay just called up their #1 shortstop, Franco, and all of a sudden, he's out there and he gets to hit his first home run as a big leaguer. Those are opportunities that, these kids are getting, and the Dodgers have the same thing, with Seager and, those guys that came through their rookie and their second years were phenomenal. So it's just, I think that's what's good for the game is you're getting to see more youngsters come up and get their opportunity.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. It was really a pleasure meeting you at Phil Trainees, and I hope you come out and visit us again.
Oh, I'm going to be out in October or August
Okay.
or September. So absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Thanks,
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Take care. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.